Benvenuti, good afternoon to the best here at Villa La Collina. It's an honor to welcome Professor Katarina Stanoevska from the University of St. Gallen. You are the chair of digital communication at the Institute for Media and Communication Management. That was established like 20 years ago.
That's right, 25.
25 at the famous business school where business computing was already established as well. But in those days, you were the pioneer with other key people to establish the MCM Institute, the Media Communication Management Institute. And I mean, your work over more than 2 decades there always goes hand in hand with key players in industry, because digital communication is so important within corporations, whether small, like a startup, or global corporations nowadays more than ever. And with respect to sustainability, communication is, of course, key.
Yes.
Between people and between corporations and their customers and their stakeholders. So,
that's right.
Welcome here, Benvenuti.
Thank you.
Very much,
Thank you very much for this nice introduction. I would also like to welcome you to my talk, which is related to social media and awareness for sustainability data. As Achim said, I'm working a very long time in digital communication, so I followed up all the developments on the web. And for us, it was very interesting to see how so I bring also a new perspective in my talk compared to the previous ones, because I want to show how companies deal with this sustainability, climate, and these kind of topics in their communication. So how they experience that and how they try to somehow get this visible in social media. So we followed up basically the whole development of digital media, for example, like first like websites, then social media, mobile. Now, of course, we are waiting for the metaverse to see what will happen there. Maybe one of the next conferences will be in the metaverse, who knows? We will see. And but for now, we're working on social media since 2.5 years. The communication of sustainability and these kind of topics through social media. And why was this very challenging? First of all, we know that the pressure on companies is also very high, that they also comply with. There are new regulations, there are reporting regulations, there are regulations that companies should become compliant, climate aware, they should be more sustainable. We saw some of the applications in the morning which go in this direction. And based on all this regulation, for example, for reporting of sustainability initiatives, there are, of course, the specific reports that they have to deliver. But of course, social media are a special type of channel in which they can also communicate interactively. So the social media is the only channel where they get directly feedback on what they publish as posts, and at the same time they can initiate the interaction with their consumers. Because just to say it before the conclusion, we found out that companies, they have a lot of options how to invest in climate awareness, in sustainability, human rights topics, and so on. But it is very expensive to really invest in something. So they try to get the legitimacy for their what they are doing, that they are doing the right thing. And for that, the communication in social media is very important, because they really get direct feedback. And it was interesting for us to see data-driven, so we are not working based on surveys, where you have a lot of biases, because people usually answer what they would do, like a wishful thinking. But here we can analyze the concrete behavior, how they really behave when they see something, when the companies are talking about. So I will bring the company perspective in our discussion today, and at the same time the consumer and user perspective, because they answer in social media, so they are not quiet, but they react on that. And social media is basically the only interactive digital media where it can be communicated in this way. And now you probably ask yourself, how is it possible to actually communicate such a complex matters? Because human rights or climate compliance and what you're doing in this area, and then you have to squeeze it in one picture, in small video, or in few sentences, if you take the time to talk. So how do you actually do that? And that was, we were also curious to see if there is at all this kind of information, if the companies really dare to do that, and if they dare, how they do that. So, so I have 2 projects in which we are looking into these topics. One is how companies communicate their CSR, ESG efforts over social media. So this is the longer one that we are working on 2.5 years. And the second one that we just started in a European doctoral network is how sustainability data can be communicated in agricultural ecosystem, which goes in direction of the new supply chain regulation. How can you expose this kind of data? First of all, identify what is relevant in agricultural ecosystems, and then how can you expose this kind of information to the different stakeholders that you have? And for the first topic, we have chosen Instagram, because Instagram was at least actually researched as a medium for social media, CSR and ESG communication. There is some literature about Twitter, and this has also the reason because it was the easiest to get data from Twitter. Unfortunately, we don't know what will happen, so a lot of knowledge regarding Twitter will just be useless anymore. But we looked into Instagram because it's one of the now most popular for companies. And at the same time, you can find, of course, the young people that are still active there, but also older people. And maybe you are curious, how does sustainability communication look like in Instagram? So I can show you some examples. You can see here. And the interesting thing is, for example, when you have to communicate something like the Earth Day, you want to communicate something about the climate, you need the right picture, because if the picture doesn't take your attention, then usually people don't really read further. But this is something like a post which says, on Earth Day and every day, we are transforming our business for the future. So in many cases, companies are trying to inform what they're actually doing. But there are also some kind of posts, for example, here, Throwback Thursday, and only the picture with the bear might somehow create associations to nature, to usually these kind of white bears are shown in order to show how the snow is melting, how everything is changing. And then you have this kind of non-CSR images, which try to show some kind of nature or healthy food, but actually the message is in the text or in the hashtags from Instagram. So that's our database. And what we did is we actually took the Brandwatch index. There you have 634 brands which are listed on the brand index, and we took only those that have an Instagram account that communicate in English. These are usually global active companies that communicate on English and have at least one post, so that there is some kind of an activities there. And based on this, we have 369 brands. From them, we took for each of them 100 posts. So we have a data set of 39,600 posts. And based on that, our first comments that we got we are able to get download from the Instagram API was 470,000. Because when we did this the first time, there was a limit that you could only download 24 comments. But then they opened to 48. And now this database of comments on this kind of posts, replies, including also replies, is about 1 million of comments that we have available. So based on that, we try to analyze, are the companies talking about this kind of topics at all on Instagram? If they do, what are the topics that they choose? So if you look at the 17 SDGs, the numbers don't sum up to 100 because sometimes they choose several topics. For example, they have human rights and sustainability, or combined different of them. And here you can see that's only about 7 to 8% of the Instagram posts of the companies are usually related to this kind of sustainability, climate, or SDG oriented communication. This is actually understandable because to actually manage such an account costs a lot of money. And if you imagine, for example, in Instagram, companies publish maybe 1, maximum 2 posts within a year. And then if you have 356 days, you only have the place for 356 posts on Instagram. And the question is, to what do you dedicate those posts? Do you want to sell? Do you want to launch a new product? The typical marketing communication, or do you go for CSR? And what we found out, that CSR is not very much represented, like this 8. Sometimes some companies have 10%, but it's usually around 7 to 8%. Which reflects a little bit also what they are doing, because in social media, a lot of the companies that we wanted to look at from these 396, actually some of them don't communicate at all about these topics on Instagram. For example, what you can see here, the SDG distributions, most of them mostly represented is good health and well-being, which means that they provide some kind of recipes, they provide some kind of good how you should live, well-being, and so on. And in good health and well-being, our data set is a little bit biased because it includes the 2 COVID years. So health and COVID was actually one of the major topics, which is actually reflected here in this number 3, SDG number 3. But then you see also number 10, inequalities, are very much on the second place and quite represented. And this is because companies, we found out that they usually choose topics where they can make an impact. For example, if you take hunger, no hunger in the world, there is not much what a company can do alone. They can, of course, distribute some food at a certain day or for lunch or something like that, but this won't change the situation very much. So basically, we think that within these SDGs, we saw another representation yesterday by the talk of von Weizsäcker. But for us, it is clear that within these 7 SDG topics, there are some that can be only settled on international level. Companies will never try to provide any kind of impact there because it's even impossible. So that's why the second topic, reducing inequalities, this includes the topic, for example, LGBT and so on. It's much easier to implement because then they have policy for equality, inclusion, and so on. And that's how they actually contribute to this kind of SDG. There is also increasing advocacy of companies. For example, that they will say, we approve the move to a marriage for same-sex marriage, and so on and so on. So advocacy in the terms that if there are some kind of social issues, that the companies say, we stand for that, and we are actually on that side or on that side, depending on what they decide to do. Gender equality, number 5, is also a very often a topic if they communicate, because of course this is again something that they can really implement. To say, okay, now we have more women, we have more managing women, and so on and so on. So we did a deep dive. We are currently working on a paper which goes deeper in this second one, the reduced inequality, gender equality, and so on. Everything what can be summed up about human rights topics. It's about 6 human rights topics that you can see, starting from the very broad one, like peace for everybody, but then also gender equality and others. You can see them up there. And what you can see is the different industries and how many posts they have dedicated to this topic. For example, like, I have to see if, yeah. Airlines, they have SDG 9 is 5, SDG 11, 10, but together it's about 4 airline industries that we have in the data set, 20 posts regarding this topic. Then automotive, 117, and so on, about 888 posts in total for human rights. But this is a little bit more detailed coding of the data set, because we did this with machine learning based on dictionaries, and we got a higher percentage based on the text instead of the pictures. Then if we go further into this, oh, sorry. So the first ones were actually the sustainability, sorry, I mixed them up. So the sustainability SDGs, you can see how many. And based on the pictures, it's 888. So based communication based on the pictures. And the second one is basically the human rights topics. It's again 6 of the SDGs or more of the SDGs. And what we can see is that gender equality, as I said, it's easier to implement, or not easier, but that's something that they can really provide a contribution to. And gender equality is also relevant within the companies as well. Then equality again, and here we have teaching. In many cases, they try to support young people with scholarships, or for example, like financial institutions, they try to provide financial literacy, some programs that also for children, for example, and support. That's why also education fits with their product, and that's why it is on the 3rd place based on frequency. And if you go back to sustainability, we can see that financials also have like a higher portion of the sustainables, or oil and gas. That's also very interesting. Industries that are basically very much under pressure. Oil and gas is not known as a sustainable industry. So they try to actually go against with communication. Yeah. Then the social media communication of the companies is also driven by global trends. So within our data set, we could discover, for example, death of George Floyd. So most of the companies were communicating that Black Lives Matter. Or Pride Month, usually we have an increase because they show the support, and many of them even again try to motivate the users show what their employees are doing in that way, communicate also in favor of the Pride Month, and advocate for these topics, which in many of the companies how to say, less and less controversial, because there are new regulations. Many of the topics have been resolved and achieved, so that it is not so controversial to be here or to go with the wave. But interesting is, for example, that companies that are not situated in Europe, for example, would seldomly follow this trend. because Black Lives Matter, it's a topic which usually comes from the US, but it can also go into European companies, and then we call it, they are riding the wave, even though they are maybe not communicating or not considering Black Americans or employees or something like that, that they try to actually get also advantage, leverage the current wave of communication which is available in social media. And you can see it clearly that that's what happened during the 2 years that we had in our data set. Then it's also interesting, most of the companies have no, or from those 600, we could select only 396, and from them, again, only few have related CSR-related posts, but some of them have clear CSR focus. And this is typically pharmaceutical companies, medical companies that try to leverage on that topic. And in particular, in COVID time, it's clear that they are the champions, so to say. But you see known companies like Merck, Mars, Tyson Foods, or others that we know actually by name, that they have a relatively small portion of CSR communication. Another view from another perspective, when we exclude the health industry out of that, then we still can see that the remaining industries, like financial, Goldman Sachs, Lloyd's Banking Group, and so on, they appear very small here, but they still communicate something, at least. And there are other companies that don't have any kind of communication. Why is that? Because first of all, it is very difficult to choose the right topic. Second, so as long as you do what you think is good and don't ask for an assessment outside, it's okay. You can justify for you, against yourself, you can justify the whole thing. But if you go out with it, you can even earn a shitstorm because of that, because if the users don't believe you, and they clearly tell that. That's why we have so many comments also on the posts from that have CSR related topics. So what we found out is that also companies that have a lot of many followers tend to communicate less because they are afraid. The more followers you have, the higher the probability that they will be negatively maybe oriented towards that. And it's also interesting that when they communicate as if they inform, as if they are talking about over the website and not in social media, where they say, please talk to us, give us feedback, and so on. So they seldomly ask for that. Only some champions like Nike and Adidas, they have more than the others, even though they have, Nike, for example, has several millions of followers on Instagram. Here you can see the most active CSR communicators per industry. So healthcare, it's clear, I just explained. Then we have pharma. Then we have packaged food and beverages and financials. But in general, they try to avoid the dialogue, because what we also find out is that you have to negotiate your sustainability orientation. You cannot just invest somewhere and say, okay, now I'm compliant, but you have to actually get the approval of your consumers, of your users, and the NGOs that are also active in social media. So you can see most of the frequently themes that come in the text part of the communication, something like help, world, love, people, woman, very often Black, health, COVID, of course, because of this specific bias that we have, but also pride, community, family, together, These are the words that are usually used in this kind of communication. A third of the posts were related to health issues, COVID, and you can see the different type of communication. These are some examples, for example, like unite to support global COVID relief or COVID relief campaign, then World Health Day connected to COVID. Many of them communicated about vaccination and how they decided towards their employees, what they expect, how they keep their shops and all the offices clean in a way, so and that they can help somehow to get over over COVID. So you see here again from pharmaceuticals and healthcare are the top, and then all the others have in 2 years not many posts related to that, but even the luxury industry, which is very averse of CSR, sustainability, and similar topics, they had one of these posts within our dataset related to COVID. Then less than 1% of these companies address the climate change. So it's not a topic that they can, which is somehow understandable, because one company cannot really help to change the climate or to provide a contribution. There have to be, everybody has to be in the work in the same direction in order to provide really impact. So in many cases you have something like, let's talk about change, and also the tonality of the way how they communicate can be very provocative for the users, because when they say let's talk about change, they don't actually commit to anything. They just said let's talk about it, and they are sustainable in a way, you know, they have been creating awareness for the topic, but they don't commit to anything. And there most of the posts are going in this direction. Let's talk about it, let's do something about it, but without commitment that they would say we do this and this. There were only very few posts regarding that. Or because climate change is the ultimate strategy and so on. Or for example here, or KitKat, that is actually in many cases, I don't know, the company is a lot, or this brand of Nestle is with a lot of pressure because of palm oil. But they don't communicate about palm oil, they communicate about carbon, that they will be carbon neutral within, I don't know, 20 years or something like that. And this is something which is very, the users don't like that. They say, oh, what's that? We are talking about palm oil and you want to be carbon neutral. And so what we talked about yesterday about trust, to have a trusted sustainability or climate-oriented strategy, it's very difficult. That's why companies might invest a lot of money in something, but at the end, it's not legitimated from their users and from their customers. It's not accepted as such. And on the other hand, they don't dare to negotiate this. Because, of course, the users and consumers can say, we want KitKat without palm oil. We don't care about carbon neutrality at this moment. Because somehow, if you don't use palm oil, you will probably get also better values here in the carbon neutrality. What is also very interesting is that compared to non-CSR communication, CSR posts are getting less engagement. Less engagement and then negative engagement. So the posts have a negative sentiment. Because exactly because of that reasons, because let's talk about climate doesn't help the climate at all, but requires efforts from both sides to get into dialogue about this topic. Effort that might be useless because nothing will turn out of that. So The engagement in total is lower compared to the other posts that are marketing products, launching products, the typical marketing communication that we can see on social media. Most liked CSR post in our data set, that was, for example, this one for New Balance. Something like, make shoes yesterday, making masks today, which was, again, COVID-oriented. This one received most of the likes and the engagement. And this is Nike, for once, don't do it. And it was related to climate and sustainability. So don't do things that actually go against the climate or against some sustainability goals. So this was very powerful communication and was rewarded because they go against their own brand and was rewarded by the users. And something like this, again, COVID, and this is more text. Violence of nation's capital, and a more complicated matter, but still, this is the communication the users actually reward with a positive attitude towards that. Most commented, again, those that have been mostly liked. So this provoked dialogue with the users. There were a lot of comments, and of course, the dialogue lives from the replies of the company. Does the company actually react on what the users are saying? And this was quite positive and a very nice dialogue, in the sense positive dialogue with the users. And this was in a way controversial with VW, but got a lot of discussion. If they really mean this with LGBT and having the logo on it. The rainbow, it's very much used as a symbol in order to show that I am actually positive towards this kind of matters. The sentiment, as we said, on average, comments on CSR posts are less positive. So there is more negative comments, like they say, why are you lying? What are you showing here? That's not true, and so on. So they try to go against, so the users don't really shy to say if they are negatively oriented. And these are the posts that have been mostly positively perceived on this. And again, we have here Nestle and Kit Kat. It's again vegan chocolate. And that's what the users liked as a new type of product. But on the other hand, again, it doesn't say if it is, I mean, it's sometimes really controversial because you can become vegan but still use palm oil, which is controversial in the product. Even maybe use it more than before, but still this was approved. So it was legitimated by the users that Nestle is doing something in this direction. And what we can see from or for example, KFC, Buckets of Giving, they had within these 2 years several actions where they provided food for the doctors, for the medical personnel in hospitals in order to get them something to eat when they were working there over days and weeks and so on. And this was actually also very much liked and approved. But what we can see here, and again, here the rainbow, what we can actually see, that that's what is in literature, is called self-oriented and egoistic CSR and ESR, because you're actually doing things that are related to your product. You do this, but you promote your product as well. So hopefully you get more sales by being more sustainable or climate oriented and so on. But still, this works. So in many cases, companies try to get this selfish and egoistic orientation to these topics. And the most negatively perceived, for example, this kind, which they completely didn't like, or Morgan Stanley, do the right thing, put clients first, lead with exceptional ideas, commit to diversity and inclusion, give back. And then having a picture of another woman of another nationality, like a woman, other nationality, more black color, and so on. This should be sufficient in order to say we are really up to these matters. So that's why also this one was not really liked much. For example, in most cases, when companies try to push the responsibility back to the users and their consumers, they don't like that. If you want to make them bad conscious, for example, like UBS would our biggest bank in Switzerland would say, what are you doing for the ocean? And of course, this is more than negative comments, because nobody actually wants to get the bad conscience. Oh, I don't do anything for the ocean. Even and they all actually want to promote their sustainable funds and investments. What is interesting, and in literature and in science, we have this signaling theory in order to explain some of the processes that are actually going on in social media communication. And this is companies actually have to communicate in a way to against the information asymmetry, because the users, the consumers, they don't know what the companies are doing. So they have to provide communication in a very open way in order to get legitimation and against the information asymmetry, because the users don't really know if this is true or not. So they make their decision if they believe it or not based on what you write and how you write it, the tonality of the text and the message and the picture that you choose. What we also found out that companies that are constantly under attack, like the oil and similar industries, have to communicate much more. That means they have to provide more posts, they have to be more honest in order to achieve the same result as companies that are favored by the consumers, like pharmaceutical, health industries, and so on. So the let's say an oil company has to communicate double as much and double as honest as a hospital, for example, in order to achieve the same result of approval for what they are actually doing. Here you can see also these differences between companies, because not at all companies we have negative. This is like the average, and the companies that are above that in number of likes, number of comments, and number and negative sentiment. So some of them are really above the average and have a very positive communication, legitimation of what they're doing, a positive dialogue, while some are below, like telecommunication, general retail, or here on that side, consumer electronics, luxury fashion, special retail. They are all below the average. Okay, so this is basically what we do in this project. Do you maybe have any questions to this type of research? And I have summarized again the findings that we have up till now, like this 77% only CSR communication, health related has been the highest communication. Current debates provide initial communication of the topic, and so on, like Black Lives Matter and the death of George Floyd, and so on.
Yeah, grazie mille, Katarina. Communication management. Now, it's extremely important, your work, that you dived into how the media, the channels are being used. And buzzwords are shallow, and the customers, they don't jump on them.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like junk food.
Yes.
Buzzwords. And a school friend of mine, he became the CEO the last couple of years, 6 years, in the US. One of the few Germans who made it at the top 500 companies. I can't say the name, and Starbucks. And also the interim CEO of the largest apparel manufacturer in the world of VF Corporation, where North Face and so on belong to. And he became the glass bottle manager of the year as well. And I spoke with him recently about the Katarina agenda, the best. And he said, yes, I mean, the trust, and without commitment, no responsibility. And he has the slogan, and he lists that slogan also personally. I don't want to do it, but doing the right thing. So if the CEO, and then it triggers down, and then also he can use the CEO, his media people, his social media people. It might be a complete new mix of social media people that you need in your corporation.
That's right. Yeah.
To stop these buzzwords, to stop these shallowness. To really say, well, of course we want to do business, but I want to sell a chocolate bar that not only, tastes good, but is good, say, somehow for the planet as well.
Or maybe tastes not so good as usual,
well,
as we're used sometimes.
Don't squeeze out the last penny and so
yes.
on. Yes. Yeah. So very good to say, well, where's the commitment and so on.
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
So thank you very much for the approach.
Katarina?
No, it's fine. It's fine. Thank you very much for the very nice and very interesting talk. Can you say something to differences between the countries and the effects that you were seeing there? So is it that in the US there's more response to this Instagram post, people are more positive to it than in Germany? Did you?
Yes, that's actually something that we are trying to do as a next step, because all of these companies are global players, and they communicate in all the, and some of the posts have been already communicated in 3 languages, and you can see the reaction also in different languages, but we have not come up to that point. But that's on our list to look into that, and also what are the cultural differences for topics, because what we know is that, and what we have noticed that from users from different areas of the world react differently. For example, if you go, for example, publish something, and you have users from Bangladesh, they will have completely different priorities to the topics compared to Europeans, for example. And but we can see that in the data sets that it is there, but we cannot quantify it yet, because we have to. This would be the next step. And another step, which is also interesting for us, and we are looking now here also in industry partners with which we can work, is the portfolio of the communication load. For example, it is not a good advice to the companies to say, don't communicate about sustainability, because this would be wrong. The question is if companies can educate their users and consumers. For example, what the next experiment that we want to do is, if a company is regularly, even their less engagement, negative engagement, if they are communicating frequently and keeping that topic, if they can actually educate their users, if they can really explain them when they are serious. For example, the next experiment would be to have people use or look at the social media or go to the customers of companies that we think are suitable and see if when they are using frequently social media, the social media channel, if when they go shopping at the same company, they choose the more sustainable products. For example, even if it is insurance companies, if they would take the digital process and the insurance instead of the paper-based, for example. And what we expect, our hypothesis is that under consciousness, there is an impact. There is an impact, and this is actually the right contribution to from the companies that they can do, because they can educate their consumers and users. Okay, yes? Thanks.
Also, thank you very much for the interesting talk. I'm looking forward to actually read the papers you're publishing or have already published. So what is interesting for me is this social media company aligned with the overall sustainability strategy of the companies? Did you look at it? And with their reporting, is there a connection, or is it like different departments?
Yes, this is also a topic that we are going to look at. What we up till now discovered that this selfishness, that it's often related to their products. Like a financial company would provide sponsorship for financial literacy in schools, for example, or a KFC would provide food for somebody. So it's very how to say egoistic, oriented to their own products. And of course we are trying, but this will be also like a next step to compare what they actually do. But it's a little bit more difficult because the way how you communicate here, for example, you cannot say something like our processes use, I don't know how much paper, less than, because you have to take the whole process. Sometimes they outsource, they say we use less paper, but for that they outsource this to the consumer, you know. So you have the electronic bill, and so if you want to archive it for yourself, and many of us don't know how to do it electronically, you know, don't trust that you have somehow stored your bills and have to keep them, and so you print them out. Or the flying ticket for the flight or something like that. Yeah. So it has to be taken, and it is the question how they really have a role in educating the users in this kind of more sustainable processes, so that they say not only here you can find your electronic bill and we are compliant and more sustainable, but tell them what you can do with this bill, how you can manage it, because many people then take the digital bill but don't really comply with that. So at the end they send it again with paper, for example, in the insurance, because they get the email and everything, no reaction, forgot the password, and no, and then don't use the paperless process, for example. Yes, sorry.
Thank you so much for your presentation on this conference. We talked a lot about trust, and I was wondering, since now there's this age of fake news, and sometimes you can't rely if posts are authentic or if comments are authentic, and if the user is authentic. Can you tell something about that? If you observed that certain companies basically operated with fake users and fake posts to improve the sentiment on their posts?
Yeah. They are usually very much tempted, and I think this happens on the social media level, social media manager, who decides, for example, of a European company where this is not such a big question compared to the USA. There is a wave of Black Lives Matter or Me Too, for example, and then we go with that. Even though they don't have anything in the strategy, they have never published in any of the reports that they are actually going in this direction. And this is very tempting, and that's what they're actually doing. We say they're riding the wave because then they get attention. Using this hash tags and so on creates a lot of attention for the companies because the topic at that moment is hot. And here, the temptation to do this wrong communication, or not really something that they do, or is very high. But I suppose that there is always also the connection between the management and the social media manager, who sometimes has some kind of degree of freedoms and goes with the wave, so to say. Yeah.
Can I follow up on this?
Yeah.
Because this authenticity issue, and also apologizing. Recently, there was a case with Budweiser, Bud Light, right?
Yeah.
And so the company angered its core constituency by having a transgender person as well as a spokesperson. And then, so the customers wanted by not buying the beer anymore, Bud Light. And then the company the VP of marketing and the CEO gave her an apology, non-apology. And so it didn't work very well. Essentially, they ruined the company. So can you say something more about what a company should do as a response to like when they enter a crisis management or crisis communication?
Exactly. So what we are actually trying to get all of this. That's our university is famous, so to say, from insights to impact. We always want to deduce the do's and don'ts. And for example, like there is something like that. Be prepared for critical comments and start discussion. So, but with facts, not try to lie, because lies don't really work online. Talk about actual achievements and not only promises, because promises and you never deliver, they will say, leave me alone with that, I don't believe you. Be transparent and also admit mistake. For example, if you say, let's learn together how to do this, how to get more sustainable, how to use the electronic bills, for example, how to get together more sustainable. This would be something, a very powerful strategy, but it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of resources to do that. And it takes you time, as I said. What we are also going to invest is the mix of communication. As I said, if you constantly communicate in direction of sustainability, all of a sudden the brand is assumed as sustainable. For example, there has been a report in Switzerland who are the most, which of the companies are considered most sustainable. And on the fourth place is a startup from our university, 5 years old, and they communicate all the time. They started, their business model was, for each t-shirt, we plant a tree. And this continued, then we are having a very ecological production, we produce in Switzerland, and so, and this stays in the consumer set, such a small company, to be known in Switzerland on the fourth place as sustainable brand, it's really an achievement. And it's communicated by the CEO, it's communicated by the company, and they have really sometimes very, very strong discussions with there, because they sometimes say, yes, but this you didn't do ecological, it's not good. And they say, yes, not everything can be sustainable. I mean, also that's like admit mistakes, be transparent. And also like don't talk about topics if you can't walk the talk. So what, I mean, you can say we have solidarity with George Floyd family and so on, and the people that support him, and but you can say it once, not 10 times, because at the moment it's opportunistic to do that. Yeah, so thank you very much. And if somebody has interest in